unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Nathan Hamlin, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live, the international show that is growing by the week, and we thank you, the audience, for doing so. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. J, co-hosting with me live in London, where it's just after 3 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, is, of course, my good friend, Johnny Webb. And as always, we have a fascinating show for you today. But today is a very special show because it's a topic that's very close to my heart. And really, I have to say, this is a global magician who has come back from tours. I'll let him explain in a second. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. And of course, again, you could follow him and do everything and do all your research afterwards once you get a glimpse of how down to earth he is and how talented this gentleman is. And that is the one and only Dan Sperry. Dan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yay! Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you on. It is truly a pleasure. I've never said this on shows. I didn't even say it when we had Uri on, when we had, of course, Darius Zidabari. And I must say I did tell this to Chelsea, who works with, of course, David Copperfield and Murray Sawchuk, as well as the people who are managing Penn and Teller. I am interested in magic. Now, all the answers I've gotten from everybody, either on the radio or even in person, like, for instance, Chris Angel, everybody says that they were inspired to do magic for two reasons. One, it amuses people. You know, they want to be fooled. And secondly, of course, something happened in their childhood where they were either given a magic set or they were given or shown a trick of some sort, and they were blown away, and that's what led them down this path. So if you don't mind me starting there, what got you into magic?
Well, what got me interested was when I was about 4 years old, like 4 or 5. I mean, it was still preschool age. My grandparents, I grew up in Minnesota, right? And my grandparents took me to see Copperfield. And so let me start over again too. Where I grew up in Minnesota was about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours back then, north of Minneapolis. So it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, right? And there was no magic shops. This is also before YouTube existed and any of that. So the only exposure you got to see magic at all was pretty much on the occasional, TV, program, or if a dude came to your show. You did a show at your school, came and did a show at your library or something like that, or a birthday party or something. So I know I'd seen magicians before, but at that age, you kind of don't really get it, to a degree. So my grandparents took me to see Copperfield, and I didn't know who he was, and I knew we were going to see a magic show, but I was more probably like excited that I got to stay up past my bedtime and go into the big city, which to me at the time the big city was Minneapolis, and it was a big deal. And so I didn't know what he did. I'd never seen him before, obviously, and I knew nothing about him because and that was also too. I didn't know that magic could be that theatrical and over the top and with lights and fog and whatever, big loud music and stuff. I didn't know it could be so theatrical and so just magical, for lack of a better word, just magical. And so here it is, the show starting, and I'm like totally psyched to be there. And he used to open his show with this thing called the Death Saw, which he was like, the first guy to really do this, where he gets chained to a table, he has to escape before this giant spinning saw blade comes down and cuts him in half. It's like a Bond villain, torture device thing, like you'd see James Bond get locked into in a movie or something from, various James Bond movies. And so then, so he's got to get out, and then something goes wrong. The premise is that something goes wrong, and the saw drops too soon, and you visibly see him get cut in half without any boxes, without any of that. So at 4 or 5 years old, I'm seeing this, and I freak out. I think this guy just died. I don't understand what's going on. Like, I bought into it. I'm a little kid. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. This is crazy. Totally buy into it, and I'm like, holy God, what's going on? And I freak out. I have a big spasm moment. We got to go out into the lobby because, like, I'm creating a fuss and a ruckus. And we ended up having to leave because I was traumatized, And so then I was given, like, little magic tricks and stuff from the toy store to be shown that it is just, there's something behind this. It's a magic trick, But so that's what got me, is seeing that and having to have sort of like home therapy to get over that, that's like, that incident that scarred me for life, pretty much. So, yeah.
I have another question to ask you, but we already have a caller. I don't really publicize the call-in line anymore because we get flooded by questions. But nonetheless, if you're willing to take it, you want to?
Yeah, let's do it.
He just hung up. I guess here we could probably bring him back. He'll call back. Nonetheless, here was my next question. What got you to international fame? If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, did you go to Germany and just did a tour there?
I did, yeah. I've gone to Germany quite a few times. I'm real blessed and lucky to have a really steadfast and big fan base in Germany. And, like, man, they're great over there. Like, they're great. I love going to Germany. I love the food. I love the culture. I love the history, because even before I got into doing magic over there, and even before I was on TV shows over there and done tours and stuff, when I grew up in high school, where I had to go to school, you had to learn a minimum 2 years of a foreign language before you could graduate. And so in my school, the only languages that they offered, because it wasn't a very big school, it was either German or Spanish. And I was like, screw Spanish. That sucks. German's way cooler. Like German's such a sexy language. I was like, Spanish isn't a romance language. To me, German was a romance language. I was like, that just sounds great. Plus, my brother and sister had taken German. My sister had studied in Germany for several semesters, because her original degree at university was going to be, when she just started going to college, was going to be international business and stuff. So she had stayed, hardcore with her German. So she was always, around the house speaking German. And, when I got to school, when I was able to start taking it, because she's older than me, but when I was able to start taking it and she was in college, I was like, no, I want to take that too, and so that's what I did. But it was through that of course, you don't necessarily just learn the language, you learn the culture and the history. And I got into and fascinated by some of the lore of things like the Foo Fighters and things like that. So that was kind of an early sort of interest-piquing topic. Of course, I didn't vocalize it too much because, I didn't want my German teacher to think I was, he was this crazy kid, whack job going, no, I don't want to talk about that this week, Professor Pfeiffer, can we talk about those Foo Fighters? Can we talk, what was up at the Bell? What was that again? Can we talk about that? And whatever. So I kind of kept to myself and, did my own little side research stuff. But yeah, I mean, I did several, runs in Germany. I try and do something there at least once a year because I'm pretty tied up stateside as of recently. I was just back there in March. I'll be back there again in the autumn for 2 weeks, doing a tour of 12 cities that we're just about to announce. Actually, I think at the end of this week we'll announce when the cities and when the tickets go on sale for that. So that'll be cool because it'll be good to get back there. And I mean, as far as just gigging, that's all I've really done. Is I've always just kind of done shows. Started doing birthday parties, and then that grows, word of mouth style. And then I started doing daycares and school assemblies, and and it just kind of snowballed. I didn't really have per se a moment. I didn't per se have like the breakout. That was the one thing. It was a lot of little things that sort of all came together and helped helped me continue along, to where I'm going. And I've just been riding the wave, pretty much this whole time.
Now, let me ask you this. You mentioned the Foo Fighters, and I didn't plan on going there at all, but what did you think they were?
Then or now?
Both.
Okay. I thought perhaps back then, because I've always been, even to this day, I've been a skeptic, an open-minded skeptic, I guess you could say. Yes. Because what's been great about, learning and studying magic, inadvertently, it has taught me how easily people can be manipulated, just everyday people, fooled, manipulated to believe things. I mean, I remember being, blindly getting interested in paranormal things and learning about Sylvia Browne when she was alive. And I went to one of Sylvia Browne's readings when I was like 15 on Halloween night, ooky spooky, whatever. But like, and then seeing it live after reading some of her books and, seeing her on some TV programs, seeing her live going, oh my God, she's just doing magic tricks and cold reading and she's fake. This isn't real, So at that age, too, I was open-minded as to what could that be, try and go for the most realistic sort of answers. And at the time I remember thinking, well, people could be easily, fooled under just the stress of war. The stress of war is something that I think could have been easily, impressed on these guys' young minds who were drafted.
That's right. That's right.
And it could have been just simply a reflection of maybe something on another plane, but it only takes one or two guys like Chicken Little syndrome. The sky is falling, and then everybody believes it, and but who really knows nowadays? I'd like to believe, and I've actually gone the opposite direction, thinking that perhaps maybe I'd like to be a little bit more lenient on the side that maybe they were up to something. They did have some sort of technology that they had either acquired or created that, perhaps may have allowed such a thing,
Now, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
29.
Okay, so how long have you been performing magic on stage and for people on the streets or however you've been doing it?
A loose hobbyist ever since I saw Copperfield, when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then that grew into more of a serious study, probably in later grade school years. And early middle school is when I did my first real show, really advertised to do a show and start wanting to, try to get bookings and start performing, more than just kind of whipping out a couple tricks at a family gathering or a little block party thing or some sort of social situation and casually just have a little deck of cards that I'm playing with or something. I wanted to build and work on something and just have that creative outlet because I wasn't an actor or a painter or anything like that, but I had something. I don't know what it was. I felt something. I felt the need to create something, and magic, I thought, obviously something I was already interested in, but I thought the open-endedness of what you can do with magic, especially because it's alive. It is bare bones, down and dirty, best seen live always, regardless of whoever might argue that, they watch magic on YouTube or on Facebook or on TV. It's best viewed live. It's so raw and real. live, and so having that having that adventure with an audience is something that I've always been into and still am into. Like I don't do it as quick flash and trash. I try not to do it as like quick flash and trash for the viewer, or the audience, where it's just like, look what I just did. Haha, wasn't that amazing? Or haha, fooled you, or haha, I bet you can't figure it out. Look, right now I'm holding the 5 of diamonds, and I'm just going to shake it, and now it's now it's a dollar bill or something. Like that to me is just pointless. That's just jacking off. And I want to go on an adventure with the audience, so that's something I've always kind of wanted to do and create these, sort of feelings, which is, and I've always been a fan of, and way into like, horror, thriller, genre stuff. My dad used to, have and be into the Universal Studios monster movies. He got me into them, when I was a kid, and all that. And Halloween was a big thing. My dad would decorate out the, the yard and stuff, and it was really cool. I'd always save all my Halloween costumes. I never, even those, junky plastic ones. I always, would save them, and I would just wear them around and just disassociate, disappear into make-believe. And that's what's cool about magic, that you can bring and go on an adventure with an audience and go into this world of make-believe. That's how I see it. So it's been just something I've been, toying with and working on and trying to grow with since I was about 12. I know that was a long-winded answer, man. Ooh, but hopefully we got there. That's
okay. Your answers can be as long or as short as you want. Now, I'm glad you mentioned, first of all, 2 things. The fact that you do live shows as opposed to TV, because TV allows several cuts. It allows the extra illusion of, say, a crane to maybe lifting Chris Angel up, as we've seen in Magic's Biggest Secrets Revealed. That was a great, great show with, I believe his name was Valentino, right?
Yeah. I was more a fan of Mitch Pileggi from the X-Files. He was the host. But this is my take on it.
Now, going back to what you were saying, how people are easily manipulated and fooled. During the early 1900s, Harry Houdini, had a big problem with these psychic mediums that were passing themselves off as able to connect themselves to other people, to the people on the other side. And so when he had this meeting to talk to his dead mother, and she says, oh, she says this, she says that, and he blew her right out of the water saying, my mother doesn't speak English. She speaks Yiddish. And then he went on a crusade. And some of the magicians we had on believe that he may have been killed because of his war on these psychic mediums. So what's your stance on that? Because, as you know, they're still thriving.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily believe that there was a hit that was followed through. I wouldn't be surprised if he got death threats, but because it was big business back then, but not so big as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but as far as I understand, because I read the book, it's called Houdini, America's First Superhero, or the World's First Superhero, or something like that. And it's a really great book. It's written by I think it's like David Blaine's like best friend. I forget his name right now, but it is a really good book, and it does have a lot of things about Houdini that not a lot of people knew. Anything like that was going on in his life. Usually it's always the same stuff written over and over and over again, and you might get a new fresh nugget here or there. This particular book, it was a lot. There was a lot of really fresh and new information, and presented with new ideas and new approaches, and that was one of them. That he was exposing all these psychic mediums, because at least what he did, he was a really great escape artist and master of just publicizing things. He was actually a really terrible magician. He wasn't really a king of cards. He was actually pretty sloppy from the way from what history seems to have told us. I think from what I've collected and read. But either way, I mean, he was still just, he's in the dictionary, so you can't argue with that. But he was real close to his mother. And when she died, and this whole medium thing was going on, he was good friends with Arthur Conan Doyle, and it was Conan Doyle's wife that was, supposedly a medium. And I believe it was Conan Doyle's wife that did the reading that you're talking about. She wrote a note and was supposedly communicating with Houdini's mother and doing it in English. And then she also drew like a cross and like a crucifix or something like that. But Houdini's Jewish, so he was like, well, that would never fly in my house. Like, that can't be her, And there were some others that that as well that he had seeked out their profession and skill or whatever you want to call it, and was let down. And I went through the same thing, like I said earlier, when I saw Sylvia Brown. Granted, I'm not trying to talk to any dead people, but where I grew up in Minnesota, there was a kidnapping. I think it might not be anymore, but for a long time, it was the most famous, or, might even go so far as to say infamous, kidnapping in the United States. It was done in broad daylight by two gentlemen in a van. There was like 7 little boys on their bicycle. They had, these guys had no weapons. They had nothing. Broad daylight in front of everybody. And they just verbally manipulated, these, 10, 12-year-old boys to get off their bikes, lay down on the ground, and they just happened to go for this boy, Jacob Wetterling. And there was the whole Jacob Wetterling Foundation was actually at this reading with Sylvia Brown. And they had a whole section, because obviously they had all bought tickets together. They had a whole section, and they had, big signs, looked like a WWF wrestling thing, where they're holding up the tag board signs and everything. And Sylvia Brown's totally ignoring this whole section, the whole time. They're trying to hoop and holler and get her attention because they want to know where is Jacob Wetterling, because to this day still hasn't been found. And amongst all the other waka waka nonsense that Sylvia Brown was up to, it was coming down to the end of her program. She's still ignoring them, not even addressing them. And I'm watching this going like, boy, this is uncomfortable. I'm just like 15-year-old kid, but I'm going, boy, this is uncomfortable. And so finally she's doing, where she's taking, audience members' questions, and everybody got like a little raffle type ticket, and it was like call-in bingo. Like, she had one of her minions, turning a little raffle card mix-up, machine, and they pull it out, name your number, you get to come down and ask questions. Well, it just so happens, somebody came from every section except that one, and I noticed that right away, and I was like, oh, well, that doesn't look so good. And man, these guys were smart, because she gets towards the end and, okay, well, we're done, asking questions now. If you can write me. If I didn't get to your question, please write me at, blah, 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 and we'll set up a reading or something like that. So the Jacob Wetterling Foundation people, though, they're smart. They had brought a beach ball, and they had written on the beach ball, where is Jacob? And they blow up the beach ball, and they bat the beach ball down to the little stage area that she's on, because it was in like kind of a small arena, They bat the beach ball down, and it literally lands right at her feet, and she can't ignore it now. And so she goes, picks up the ball and reads it, and she reads it out loud and says, where's Jacob? The whole place, the whole venue loses it. They're cheering, they're going crazy, because it's such a, it was like the Lindbergh Baby Part 2. Where is he? Nobody's ever known. It's a small town, in Minnesota. Like, it wasn't like it was in Minneapolis or St. Cloud, where, you got, and this was before all sorts of any kind of, refugee reassignment thing that's created tension and aggression as of, lately. And none of that stuff, existed. There were really no gangs. That stuff just didn't exist. So it was so abnormal, such a strange, story. So she reads the beach ball, and then she goes, oh, that's right. You know what? I think I do remember having an out of body, this, that, the other, with this little boy. And so she goes into this whole spiel about how she was like, I didn't realize it was him, but now I know it was him. There was this little boy that I had this, thing with, and that's out of body vision. And then it turns into, this whole thing. And basically what she does, long story short, she cuts into this whole story of how, well, his body's going to be found, and it's going to be in a wooded area near water, which is, of course, your typical, psychic medium type response,
Now, here's a question. I have no idea what it's going to be. I mean, I don't even know who this person is. This is near my backyard, and of course, we got to thank Cheryl Kagan for this. So I definitely want to respect her by asking someone who's in her backyard. This is Lisa from Beverly Hills, California, asks, ask Dan if he has ever heard of Kastner the Great, Rudolf Kastner. His writings were banned in Nazi Germany. Do you know what that means?
No. Kastner. That name does not ring a bell, but I'm going to write it down because now I'm interested.
Yeah, it's K-S-S-N-E-R is what it was written as.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny's got a question from you from another listener. Johnny, go ahead.
Well, I've got two Facebook questions coming in. One's from Paul in London, and he asks Stan, what's Stan's take on Jesse Ventura as the former governor speaking out about things, he says in big capital letters? How is he perceived in Minnesota by the Minnesotians?
Man, you know what? I remember when he got elected, and then after his term was over, and then he had a television show. I think it was on like True TV, some super deep cable network that you need about a $500 a month subscription to have that channel. But I remember seeing clips of it online, and I think it was called Conspiracy Theory. It was Conspiracy Theory. Jesse Ventura. Yes. Yeah. And
who's our upcoming guest, by the way, and Sean Stone and Tyrell Ventura, his son, are good friends of mine, and Sean comes on every few months, which is great. But go ahead and ask that question. Then we got another.
Sure, yeah, but it's pretty. It's just hot and cold. I mean, like the thing with Ventura is it's just kind of hot and cold. There isn't any in between. Either people like him or people don't like him. But it's not that they don't like him because of his his views on things, as we'll say. To quote your writer there. But it was more so. It's just more so that I think it might have had to do more with his politics. Or just he was unconventional as a politician. He wore leather jackets into the Pentagon or something like that. You know what I mean? Like he was just it was. I think it was more that kind of stuff that traditional type people were a little uppity up about.
Okay,
I've got one more question.
Hold on, Johnny. Hang tight on that. But let's do the live, the live listener. Area code 719. Where are you calling from? What's your name?
Good evening, Dr. J. This is Kevin here in Colorado Springs.
Nice.
And
U.S. Air Force Academy backyard.
Oh, yeah. Nice warm day today, too, after having snow at the end of April and the 1st of May. So,
which is
very nice day today.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask your guest a couple questions here. The first one is you talked about loving the ability to create magic illusions and that. What would you say is the one you're most proud of creating? And then my other question would be, what would you say the illusion is that you're most known for?
Man, that's a tough question. I think as far as creating anything, I'm not saying I'm an artist, but I'm just going to use the term that has to do with art. The quote that says an artist's work is never finished. Now, that's not me saying that I'm an artist and to sound vain or anything like that. To a degree. To a degree, but it's not. I don't think it fits the same way. But I never. Whatever I'm working on right now, might be my favorite thing that I'm creating. But within a year, it could constantly change. I mean, I think the thing that I do an act with birds, and it's kind of something that I've been in perpetual evolution with since I was about 14, and that's something I'm the most proud of because obviously one that I've spent the most time on, and it's still to this day putting food on the table, and people don't seem to have gotten sick of it yet. So that's good, and I'm happy and proud of that. But the one that I'm probably the most known for was the one I did on America's Got Talent originally back on season 5 of AGT with the lifesaver that freaked out Howie Mandel. But I've been doing that already for several years. It's just the one that I just ended up doing on the program, and same thing, just kind of like with the birds. I mean, to this day, I still, if people happen to recognize me at an airport or at the grocery store or something, they'll, I always get like that. Oh, hey, you got any lifesavers with you? Hey, something like that. So that still kind of keeps me, I guess known for that. So that's probably the one I'm most known for, is with the lifesaver sawing into my throat with the dental floss and pulling the lifesaver out and that kind of thing.
Kevin, you said you had one more question? Go ahead.
No, that pretty much covers it there. You talked about creating, and I really like the way you said that, I guess for lack of a better term, because when you see Copperfield and you don't think about the work that magicians go to create a specific trick or illusion or act, and it's not all easy, so I definitely appreciate what you're doing and how you're doing it, because I know you go to a lot of work to do this stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you recognizing that. Not a lot of people do, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for calling. I appreciate it. Now, Johnny, before you go back to the chat room question, we do have another live caller, I believe, called in earlier. Area code 865. Where are you calling from, and what is your name?
This is Donald. I'm calling in from Kingston, Tennessee.
Nice.
30 miles west of Knoxville. And I have a question for Dan.
Sure.
Okay. Did you gaining notoriety at such a young age cause envy from the more seasoned illusionists, or were they supportive to you?
No, I mean, I did not get much notoriety or support, I guess you could say, in the beginning, when I was really starting to try to come out and do my own thing more publicly. The way I was sort of brought up or trained, I guess you could say, I didn't have many mentors or anything like that, but there was one guy in particular. He was an older guy, and he was kind of like the Obi-Wan Kenobi, like he had never had a student necessarily. His name was Bruce Jensen, and he used to work under the name Bruce Russell, and him and his wife would do shows as her name was Gigi, so they were called Bruce Russell and Gigi, and he was a old school guy, like black tails, white vest, white shirt, white bow tie, but I was into that classic stuff. I loved that classic sleight of hand. I loved all the old school, canes and top hats, candles, the fire, the birds, cards, billiard balls, all that stuff. That's what I was into, and that's what I was trained on. But I also, when I'd be sitting and practicing that magic in my in my bedroom, I'd be listening to Nine Inch Nails or the Misfits or something like that, so it was like a yin and yang thing going on. So, outside of magic, I was just this little, hellion shithead, that would just, whatever, had purple hair and stuff like that. And, but the base of, and the bottom line of what I started with, and what to this day I still really respect and I'm interested in, is what a lot of the, I guess, the older, more seasoned professionals were also interested in, and it was an era that they came from, and so I think it almost made it worse that here was a little weird gothy punk kid like me coming along, doing those kinds of things, but with my own spin maybe, or my own sort of presentation that was appropriate and true to myself. And that did make some waves. I mean, I wasn't out to try and make some waves. I wasn't proclaiming anarchy. It was just how I did it. And then at first I couldn't understand why they didn't like it. I was like, what? What's wrong with this? Like I'm doing the old school stuff. I want to talk old school stuff with these guys, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. But eventually. Eventually I won them over. Some of them still I haven't, but that's okay. I think it's like Dr. Seuss says: those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter.
Now, Donald, do you have any more? Or we got another live caller waiting.
I do have one more question, if you have time for it.
Sure, go ahead.
Does it take any special skills to become an illusionist, or is it kind of an innate ability?
Oh, I'm sorry, you cut out there. What about the ability?
Is it an innate ability that you've either got it or you don't, or is it something that you can learn?
Man, it goes both ways, I think. For example, you could be very skilled at picking up, like say person A is very skilled at picking up and learning magic. Okay, magic tricks, for example, and figuring out how to manipulate whatever it is they need to manipulate, cards, coins, a handkerchief, or whatever, right? You can be very good at that, but when it comes time to present it, you could have the personality of a sack of nickels, and nobody's gonna care. You gotta make them want to care. Otherwise, it could come across maybe arrogant or something like that. It's like nobody necessarily wants to see the lead singer front man of a band not have stage presence. Imagine if David Lee Roth, didn't have that charisma, or if Frank Sinatra didn't have that swoony, croony, style and stuff. I mean, he would have just been another singer. So, you could have, I guess in a singer, you could have a great voice, but if you have nothing to back it up and add to it, then that's hard. And the same thing is kind of like with magic. You can have a great knack for picking up certain things, but when it comes time to execute them in front of a live audience, it could fall flat. Now, as opposed to the opposite, you could be, you'd have a really great personality, and just be one of those guys that walks into a room and people just automatically like you. You could, what is it, like sell ice to an Eskimo or something, as the saying goes. Yeah. But be a terrible performer. And not be able to do very good magic. And both of these examples do exist in real life. And so, so I mean, it really can go both ways, but then that's the hard thing with magic, is in the end, it still does come down to doing a good show and being able to fool the audience, but not, like I think I said earlier, not necessarily fool them into feeling like they were tricked or fooled in a negative way, but just give them a sense of wonder that is, like that Doug Henning style sense of wonder of just that there's just you and the audience are almost experiencing this together, and it can be a really great experience and situation to present magic in that way.
Donald, thank you so much for your call. We got another one.
Yes,
we got to get as much as we can from Dan the Man as we could. Okay, so
thank you.
Area code 610. Welcome to the show, and what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Josh. I'm calling from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Nice.
Obviously, I have a question for you, Dan. Can you describe obviously what the term you're on your bio means, anti-conjurer, and obviously what is the ultimate goal of your magic act?
So anti-conjurer's got kind of a weird, fun, maybe not so fun, I don't know, interesting story. One of those sort of accidents that kind of stuck. It was a two-part thing. The original anti-conjurer thing came from I moved out. I grew up in Minnesota, like I said, and I actually moved to Chicago moved outside Chicago, and I went to the Art Institute there because I got a partial scholarship, and that made my parents happy, right? But when I relocated, I had no fan base, I had no client base, I had no nothing. So I was new kid in school, new kid in town, whatever you want to call it, and I had nothing. And so I had to take little jobs here and there to feed myself and my animals for that matter. And so I started, sort of hitting up these sort of like clubs or little concert venues and stuff like that would sometimes have like DJs come in or more like goth alternative bands and stuff like that. And I needed a name that I could call myself that didn't say magician or illusionist, because in that sort of market, that rock venue, industrial venue sort of market, I knew after, sort of visiting those places as a general, patron, that I would be risking a sort of typecasting. If I just had the title magician or just illusionist and I was opening for the such and such band or, opening for the so-and-so DJ that was going to be there, I needed a different title that sort of described what I did and piqued curiosity, but wasn't so blatant, to hopefully get, people to stick around and watch what I was about, and hopefully pray to God that, I can grab them within the first 30 seconds to a minute and they liked what they saw and they'll stick around, instead of going outside to the smoking patio or go to the bar to get a drink or, whatever, go make out in the basement. I don't know, whatever they did until the headliner came on, So that's how that came about, is I just needed a weird title that said what I did, but indirectly, magic that is presented differently in my own way, and hope you like it, is kind of what I was going for. And anti-conjurer was something that I had seen, because I'd seen a thing that said anti-establishment on it, on like a Sex Pistols t-shirt or something. I don't remember, back when I was like 14 years old. And I just remember reading that and liking it and like being like, wow, that just sounds cool. And the word conjurer obviously is a magician. And so, or a word of saying, a way of saying magician in a word. And so I just said anti-conjurer, and it just sounded kind of cool. So I just used that, and it took about that much thought. It's about 10 seconds of just going, man, like anti-conjurer. Oh, actually, that sounds pretty good. Let's just go with that. And emailed it to the club manager. All right, we're gonna call it this, and here's my headshot, and blah blah blah. See you on Friday at 10 o'clock. And so I just started using it, and then it stuck, and that's kind of how that came about. Now, in terms of my ultimate goal, I think most importantly, I don't want people, and obviously I feel like I've hinted at this several times tonight. I don't want this to be a contest of me versus the audience, where I'm doing something and they have to try and figure it out, me versus them. I want it to be something kind of mutual, that my style and what I like to go for in my magic is something that I personally like. And I hope that the audience, whether it's not necessarily their cup of tea, hopefully they can at least vicariously live through me, and they maybe want to dabble in that, and can still appreciate that sort of thing a little bit, and just still have a good time and still have a sense of wonder and feel amazed and get to see something impossible without being made to feel dumb, or without being made to feel tricked, or even, a lot of what I do is a lot of shock and maybe gore, or, that kind of thing, or edgy material in it. That's just, that's more so, I see those as just adjectives to complete a sentence, sort of like the extra little spices to throw in. But every time I go to work on a new bit that I want to put together, I want to make sure that it ticks as many boxes as possible, so that in the end, and it's always fundamentally magic trick based, because I also don't want it to go over into sideshow either. Something just for the gore and shock value, that could just as easily be considered sideshow. And people having to watch that, when I do my solo show, it's 90 minutes, with an intermission or 80, 90 minutes, whatever. If there's an intermission, I want them coming back after intermission. You know what I mean? And just hitting people over the head, boom, boom, boom with just weird, gory shock value material. That I wouldn't want that. That's not what I want to do. And I wouldn't want to have to, put any audience through that. You got to have sort of like a break. You got to sort of disconnect from that a few times throughout the evening, in my opinion. And that's what I try to do with my shows too. Just kind of make it a roller coaster, or like watching a Hitchcock movie or a Tarantino movie. Those are kind of the sort of things that I, sort of draw inspiration from, at least for me anyways, as far as, film's a big thing that inspires me, and so, I want to sort of apply those same sort of formulas, like you watch a Tarantino movie and sometimes it's just way like, Kill Bill, just ridiculously over the top and gory and people's arms getting lopped off and blood spraying everywhere and whatever. But in between all that, there's some really sort of even, dare I say, intelligent dialogue, clever dialogue, funny moments, even heartwarming to a degree, you could even say, and so that's kind of what I like to try and do as well, and just kind of mix it up, but create a nice, a nice experience, I guess.
Now, we do have Johnny in London has questions from chat rooms. I have one that's I'm waiting on, but we do have another live caller that, sorry for you folks that I sadly had to decline the call. We just, we're cutting it close, and, of course, I know you guys want to speak to Mr. Sperry, and I guarantee you, we will have him back because this is an awesome guest, and I can't wait to go to one of his shows. So let's take the next call, and that is 951. 951, where are you calling from? What's your name?
Dr. J, this is SoCal Dan, man. I'm back from Martha. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for your inspiration. Your interviews have been nothing but golden for me, man. And this guy, Dan Sperry, I'm just impressed that someone in your generation has this sense of wonder still. And I was going to ask you, do you find it hard to play to the younger audience now that we've had 40, 50 years of magic takedown shows, Penn and Teller, etc., have been showing everybody how it works?
That's a good question. Nobody's actually ever asked that question before, in that sense. And no, I haven't had trouble. If anything, it's gotten for me personally. Now I can't speak of other magicians of my generation and whatever doing what they're doing when they're running into when they're running into their own shows. Now I see it as there's a saying, what is it? You can look inside a piano and see how a piano works, but that doesn't mean you know how to write music. That doesn't mean you know how to play piano or compose. Magic's kind of similar. You can say, it's a forklift with a piece of Scotch tape and a rubber band, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can still do it. It's crazy too how fast people forget things. There's things where there's something in my show that I've been doing for forever that is just been sort of passed around YouTube. It's just one of those things that little 12-year-old boys like to just give away the secret of it on YouTube for whatever reason. They just need to learn how to talk to girls instead of talk to their webcam, if you ask me. But that point being made, I mean, that still has an effect to me, because I've had people, younger folks sometimes, even come up to me after shows and say, like, man, yeah, I know how you do that one thing. I learned it on YouTube, but I don't know how you do it, because I can't do it as good as you. But I can't get it to work like you. You know what I mean? So like, and I just kind of go like, yeah, well, that's why you practice. Now get the hell out of here, or something. So I don't, but no, like I think, one thing, obviously, in my humble opinion, the up and coming generation is too lazy. I mean, I'm not that old. I'm 29, but I can tell there's some lazy people coming up, raising their kids wrong, so, and especially saying that as a former full-time children's and birthday party magician. The stuff that I experienced, the kids are, being spoon-fed till they're like, 15 practically, in reality and in metaphor. But, so no, because nobody's going to work that hard to try and learn anything. So it hasn't been that hard. And I think the other part is that, I think it all comes down to the presentation style. It's like when you're at Disneyland, the ghosts in the Haunted Mansion aren't real, but you don't really care because you're just caught up in just enjoying the ride. Pirates of the Caribbean, those aren't real pirates. Those are robots, some of them original robots from 1952 or something like that. And you don't really care because you're just enjoying the ride. You just get lost in the experience, and when it's done, you want to go back, and you're willing to wait in line 45 minutes to go see fake pirates. Something's going on, that just takes you to that place, that where it doesn't matter. You just get lost in it, and that's what I strive for, not in an effort to protect secrets, but just because that's what I think magic should be about. So yeah, so I think that might be part of it too, is that it's just a way of camouflaging it and Jedi mind tricking them into experiencing it live. Because again, like I was saying earlier, magic is so great and raw and real live. You can't pause something, rewind it, expand the pixels, zoom in, zoom out. It's done right there. There is no explanation. It's bulletproof. It's raw. Nothing. Nobody's out of frame with a fishing pole. Dangling something down or whatever. You're seeing it right there, and that's the best way to do it.
I got a couple written questions here, so I'm going to read them to you, and then I know Johnny's got some from the UK. Okay, this is from Julie in Brandon, Florida. I'm wondering how I can learn magic and break into this as a female. So, what school or training would you advise?
Man, I would say first and foremost, if there's still a library in your town, man,
all right,
go check out the library, and because there's some really great stuff in there that that people just don't observe. Everybody just wants something quick and now and push button, and magic's not like that. You gotta work hard and you gotta study hard. So anything that you can find at a library, even a bookstore. I know there's still a couple Barnes and Noble bookstores around. And as far as the school, those don't really exist. However, there is a guy here in Vegas. He's been doing this thing for forever. It's called the Master Class, and his name's Jeff McBride. And I've known Jeff for forever. And he's one of the only very few people that are in it to make sure you get a good foundation if you are serious. And he hosts those. It's almost like a weekend sort of retreat, and then you come out to Vegas, and he brings all his students to come see all the magic shows, and they sit down and you learn how to write and how to lay out a show and a presentation, and he asks what do you want to work on, what do you want to become, what do you want to do, and he helps make sure you get set on the right path. So Jeff McBride's stuff is great, and I would say even just try and hit up a local magic club in Florida. They exist. Find a magic shop. There's a great place. I don't know how far away you are from Kissimmee, but a buddy of mine runs a place called Wizards right outside the Disney property. It's a close-up theater, and every Monday they have lectures or sometimes lectures for magicians, but they have a show for the public, and it's where guys come, and a lot of them are big names in magic will come, and it's sort of like seeing a basement, I don't know, like a basement unplugged concert. You know, like some of these guys are big name guys, and they'll just come and it'll be unannounced, and you don't know who's going to be there sometimes during the week, and they'll just pop up and throw down and work on new material, and it only seats about 50 people. It's this cool little room, and you know, I think it's like $5-10 to get in, but it gives a place for these guys to almost have like an open mic night, and that'd be a great place, you know, to try and go over and check out too. But hopefully that helps at least.
I'm sure it does. And you know what? If you're anywhere near California, the best magic shop happens to be in Disneyland, of all places, just like you said, in Florida. Yeah. Okay, here's another question. This is Connor in Ireland says, okay, what tours do you have coming up in the next couple months and in the next year? Are they in the U.S. or are they global?
Both. So I'll be going back to Germany in the fall. I'm off tour with the Broadway show that I'm on contract with right now, called The Illusionist. We just finished the second part of our first North American tour, and we're going to start up part 3 in the fall as well. And aside from that, there's a hold on something interesting that may come through in the summer for me here in Vegas that I can't necessarily talk about, but it's a limited engagement run. But hopefully, you know, that's something. But for the most part, I've been staying stateside for the past few years, just because I spent about 2 years doing not much in America, and I went overseas and did stuff in Australia and Europe and South America, you know, with the Illusionist and with my own stuff. And now it's time for me to sort of come back and reestablish, you know, myself in America. But aside from, you know, just the Germany thing, there's always potential for. I get requests to come to Europe a lot, but it's in other European countries. But it's just it's about timing. You know, it's just the timing and who gets in line first. You know, and that's about it. But you can always. There's a great app and thing called Bands in Town that I'm a part of. So if you follow me on Bands in Town, you can see all my upcoming dates, and it'll let you know if I'm near a city or town you're in, or any of the other listeners. Or you can just, you know, check out my website, dansperry.com. I got the tour page there, and I try and keep that as updated as possible.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Johnny in the UK, co-host, who's poorly been waiting, and sadly, sorry, Johnny, but I know you have some questions that you've been monitoring chat rooms and Facebook. So go ahead, my friend.
Interesting. We've had a few listeners here in England, and they are asking as well when you'll be on live in England, or if you have any shows coming up.
No, I mean, the UK, as far as England goes, I work, when I used to live in Manhattan for a few years, I worked this very notorious nightclub called The Box, and I still go back and work The Box about once or twice a year when I'm off tour with the Illusionist. And they have a Box nightclub in London that they've been trying to get me to. And again, it just comes down to timing, because like as you and I were talking about earlier, I have family out in Tunbridge Wells, and any excuse to go see them, I'm there. Like I'm down to go, you know, anytime I can over there to check it out, but and see them and hang out in the UK, because I love having a pie and some mushy peas and the whole thing. So
Yes.
if I can get over there, I get over there. But usually at this point, because I'm not really, you know, as far as the magician's asking, I'm not really much of a convention guy or convention worker. So it's usually just if it's a lucky opportunity of me just being in town for a whatever else kind of gig, and one of them being The Box, but hopefully it'll come through, you know, one of these times. Maybe this year. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, right. Well, we've got a few more questions. One is from Claire on Facebook, and she's in Cork in Ireland, and she asked Dan, what can you tell us about your Goth theme? And she's then ticked and said the craft and the magic circle as well. So there's 3 in 1 there from Claire.
Yeah. Well, the crab was one of not my favorite, but it was a movie I watched a lot when I was a kid. The Crab is a good one, but the Goth thing was just something that I was just sort of drawn to. You know, like I mentioned earlier, it was you know, especially, well, this is going to be I'm trying to in my head figure out the order of how to answer this because there's a timeline to it. So so as a kid, I was way into like pirates and Disney and make believe and everything like that, right? And I wanted to be a pirate for the longest time since I was a kid. I wanted to be Captain Hook. I thought that was like a thing. I thought that was a job that you could have. You know, like, oh, I can grow up to be Captain Hook, right? Like that's a thing. And so I was way into that, and just just anything weird and spooky. You know, like I mentioned, Universal Studios monsters, Halloween, Addams Family. That movie was coming out. You know, that was a movie that was out when I was a kid, and I loved watching Addams Family, and The Craft was one, and, you know, Hocus Pocus was a silly one, but, you know, whatever. All those things, you know, and then getting into more proper horror movies when I was older. And then I wanted to be a horror movie makeup effects artist. I thought maybe that was something I could be when I grew up. And I had a subscription to Fangoria, you know, and everything, and discovering, older punk bands, because my mom was an English teacher, and she taught English actually when she had to go to Anwick and teach English for about 9 months. She got an offer to go over there, so she went, and she taught English over there as a student teacher, and I remember she would call, you know, like every other day, you know, and call the house, and I talked to her on the phone, and I remember her telling me she sent me a postcard that had these like British punks on it, and I was like, "Who are those guys? What is that? You know, what's going on? What's this about?" She's like, "Those are punks," and I was like, "What? What's a punk? What is that?" You know, I'm like in 2nd grade or something, you know, and she sent me this awesome pop-up book called The Things in Moldy Manor, and I have one, and it's great, and it's the coolest thing ever, and I loved it. It was this haunted, you know, mansion pop-up book thing. And so seeing these, you know, these people dressed all crazy and weird with spiked hair and mohawks and eyeliner and lipstick and safety pins, and I'm going like, "What? So this isn't Halloween? This is every day? You mean Halloween can be every day? Why didn't I think of this? This is amazing," you know. And so that got me into it. And then like once I got older and could, you know, pick my own music, you know, going out to the store and, you know, buying a CD by myself and that kind of thing, I started getting into, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, there was still 80s glam rock was, you know, was kind of a thing for a bit there, you know, when I was younger. And I just sort of getting into that, and that just sort of sculpted it. I mean, I ended up becoming, you know, friends with the guys who, you know, the kids who would be considered punks. You know, you consider the punk group, or there wasn't much of a goth scene in my town. I was pretty much the goth scene. But then when I would do these magic shows, because I was also doing shows, right? When I was doing magic shows, I'd have to comb my hair, take out my piercings, dress differently, and go do my shows, because I was at an age where you couldn't have somebody looking like that, rolling up, you know, some 16-year-old kid, some punky, gothy 16-year-old kid rolling up to Tommy's 8th birthday party, you know, to do a birthday show looking like that. You know what I mean? So I would change my look to go do these shows, and yeah, I mean, I would take my mom and my grandma's clothes, and I'd steal them out of their closet and cut them up, and, you know, put electrical tape on them, and, you know, totally art out on them, and then I'd get in trouble for doing it. But, you know, sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. And once I got older and sort of my resume was able to speak for itself, you know, when I was more of late high school, you know, late teens, early 20s, I really started letting more of that slowly creep into my shows and my acts and stuff like that. So I would, you know, start out with, I'd start wearing the big boots that I was wearing normally would start, you know, creeping in, and then eyeliner and eye makeup would start creeping in, and I'd leave my hair spiked up, because I used to have big Liberty spikes that I'd slick back or something like that, you know. And you're just kind of do like a messy hairstyle, like mop top sort of thing. But otherwise, I would have like, you know, big, you know, 4 or 5 inch Liberty spikes, you know, going up all over, and yeah, leaving my piercings in. And it just slowly started creeping in. And then it wasn't until I started getting offers to do like the Magic Castle in LA. Did that provide me a scene? You know, I'm 17 years old, too young to even be there, but I got to go to the castle, and then I could just experiment however I want. I could go and fulfill that need that I wasn't getting in Minnesota, or even necessarily to its full extent in Chicago when I was living there either, because the scene wasn't quite as out there. I mean, there are some out there characters in Chicago, trust me, but being in LA and being 4 blocks from Melrose Boulevard, where all the crazies hang out and stuff, and here I'm 17, by myself, no chaperones, unchaperoned, and I'm just wandering around, eating hot dogs with these weirdos. It was pretty crazy, and so that allowed me to start creeping in, and then being invited to come out to Vegas and do different shows at the different hotels and casinos out here. Vegas, again, provided me another platform to start getting away with more and experimenting with more and that kind of thing, and that's how it really kind of came to be. And then wasn't until I was maybe about 22, 23, I just went full on. By the time I was about 22, I was totally who I was off stage was full on stage too, and that's just kind of how it's been. And then everything falls into place. It was at that point too. Everything kind of fell into place because I didn't have to try to be somebody I wasn't on stage by trying to tone it back and be concerned and please everybody and whatever. And because I was so caught up with that, I lost sight of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish. And what made me feel good and happy about it. And that's when it really started taking off.
Johnny, you got any more? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got Jasmine in Edinburgh in Scotland on Facebook, and I've noticed he's got a few female callers this evening that are texting in. But Jasmine asks, Dan, is there any other forces at work, as some magicians' work seems to defy physics even when doing live shows?
No, there's no other forces at work. It's all an illusion. I don't want to break any bubbles. I don't want to blow, pop anybody's balloons, or anything like that. But I don't want anybody getting the wrong idea about anything anybody else is doing. It's a matter of kind of like what I said earlier. It's just, people, believing, really what's being said or told to them. Magic, especially when you start, crossing over into mentalism. You guys over there in the UK, you've got Darren Brown. Darren Brown's amazing, legendary. Great, very smart, clever. Just again, too, like no flash and trash. Just real, raw, dirty, bulletproof, organic presentations, and that's when they're that good. Not even necessarily with their methods of how it's being accomplished, but if they can present magic in such a real, natural way where you're just led down the garden path until they turn on the sprinklers at the end, and that's where so it's just so that to clear up any other questions or to clear the air. No, there is no other forces at work, I'm sorry to say, except than just smoke and mirrors or whatever. It's all that, but at least whatever they're doing must have been
misdirection.
Yeah, whatever they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever they were doing must have been pretty solid, and they obviously were it was obviously done very well. Hopefully that answers that question and wasn't too disappointing of an answer. I hope. Sorry.
Now, here's a famous saying. They say, of course, it came from Houdini. I can't validate that, but it was in the movie Swordfish. What the eyes see and the ears hear, the mind believes. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I can totally see that being a thing. I think I remember that. I haven't seen Swordfish in forever. I loved that movie back in the day. But, I think that's a pretty, valid point. Good saying. Yeah.
Johnny, do you have anything else you had written? I see you have... I know there's a bunch of chat room questions, so go ahead, Johnny. Johnny Webb. That's okay. All right. So Dan, now I want to ask you what I've been trying to ask since we've been getting some of these phone calls. Now, you've done several illusions, okay? What separates you from other magicians?
You mean besides my handsome face?
Yeah, that and the goth look, if some people want to call it. Some people.
Nah, I mean,
Marilyn
I
Manson.
don't know. I don't know what sets me apart. It's just, I think everybody, I was described by the well, now ex-wife, I guess you could say, of a very legendary, very highly respected magician that's been around for forever.
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to
I'm Art Bell,
and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
Him and his wife and their daughter got into magic too as well. His name was Shimada, but his wife came up to me and told me once that I was like blue cheese, and that I know I'm not everybody's taste, but those that like blue cheese, they love blue cheese. And so I kind of was like, yeah, no, I'm totally, like, that's cool with me. I love that. I personally hate blue cheese, but that's cool. And that's kind of what she that's kind of what she said and how she put it. And I think perhaps that might be true. That might be what set me apart. To each their own. Everybody likes what they like for whatever reason, and I don't know what it is. I just kind of set out to hope and present, put together and hope that whatever I'm doing with magic is it's something I want to do, and these are presentations and approaches that I like, and I can only hope that the audience will like them too. It doesn't always work. What's hard about magic is it's probably like a comedian writing a joke. It sounds great maybe on paper or when you're practicing it, like, I think this is going to be okay. But they go up to tell the joke and the joke could bomb. And it's not as funny as they thought. Magic could be the same way. You put all this time into it, rehearsing it. Okay, no, I think I got this. This could be good. You get out in front of an audience and they're just not into it.
Yes.
So, which has happened to me. It's happened to all of us. It's just one of those things. But yeah, I mean, hopefully the audience just appreciates and enjoys it, and if they don't, hopefully they're not too offended.
Well, this is why I appreciate you doing live shows instead of television. For instance, when Chris Angel did the walking on the water, both in the lake and the pool, obviously it was just plexiglass, So, I mean, some people thought he was, Jesus, he was the son of God, he had some magical powers, but I mean, when you actually see what the elements of the trick were, it is so easy to figure it out. But I got some more questions here for you. Again, this one was exactly what I was going to ask you, but I will give Kimberly from Montreal, Quebec. She asks, Dan, what is your favorite illusion to do live? Now, I was going to say what your top 3 are, so maybe you can merge the two.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do my top 2 then. I'll go with that. I'll do my top 2. I mean, number 1 favorite to do live. Again, this always comes down to it may be whatever I'm working on at the time, but it's still, to me, it still is. The birds is something that I love to do in my show any chance I really can get, because it's sort of like it's where I got it's what started me off. It's what got me some of my first bookings, first international bookings. It's what got me to the Magic Castle. It's what got me to Vegas. It's what got me tours, TV spots, that kind of thing. So it's sort of like, it's not all the same birds, obviously, I had when I was 14 starting out, doing the act. But the energy's there. It's like racing a dog sled team. And I remember reading about dog sled racers in school and stuff. It's like I feel like we're all, me and the birds, we know what's going on. They all have their job and they all know what to do. And we all work together in those 4 minutes and 40 seconds that I'm on stage doing that one bit. It's like, it's a cool sort of, we just throw down. We just throw down together and it's like a team. It's like, that's my team, and so that's why I like it. That's fun, and the lifesaver still too, is something that, as much as I've had to do it, and as much as between even the doves and the lifesaver, as much as I'd like to hopefully be known and appreciated for other things, that I've worked on and still am putting out there. I understand why those two have been more associated with me, but I still love doing the lifesaver too as well. It's just been it's one that I've gotten, I guess, more the originally the most public notoriety, not necessarily within the entertainment business and entertainment field, but it obviously struck something with viewers and people that have seen it. It strikes something with them, whether it's just the dichotomy of the music and the imagery of this thing stuck into my throat with the innocence of a piece of candy. I don't know. It's something that they that I get asked about so much, and that's just to feel your work's appreciated and understood. I think in any sort of creation field, whether you're a painter, a poet, or whatever, an architect even, I'm sure, architecture, and I think so. Those two would have to be it. Yeah.
I know we've kept you longer than we were supposed to, but if you don't mind, can you stay on for a bit longer?
Yeah, I'm down to answer. If you still got stuff popping up.
Oh yeah, we do. Johnny's got one, and then I got a long one for you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Okay, well, we got Jeremy on the Isle of Wight, which is a small island in the south of England. He asks, what's your take on the famous Chinese face mask changer, who can change masks up to 600 times in one show? Is there anything that Western magic is missing from, say, Eastern magic?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen versions of that live, that face mask change thing. I've seen versions of that live, and it's really impressive. It's really impressive. There's a difference that I've, in my opinion, seen between Eastern magic and Western magic, and even to a degree some European magic. But Eastern magic, they breed acts. They breed I don't want to say one-dimensional in a negative way, but just I think their culture is that you do this one thing and you work every day from morning to night, and even once it's perfect, you keep working at that, and that's your thing. That's your deal. That's what you do. So if, let's say it's the mask thing, that mask thing might be the only thing that one guy can do. He does it really great, and he's a master at it. But that's all he's got. That one thing. You got to become the best at whatever, and that's what he's the best at. Whereas I feel more Western magic here in the States, for example, and Canada, UK, and stuff. We sort of breed performers that maybe don't necessarily have that one thing that is, they're known world over for, that's their deal, in the same way that the Eastern is, but it's because our culture requires us to be very good at multiple things so we can do and sell a show. You know what I'm saying? I think that is the difference, if you ask me.
Okay, now this is from Scott McCune from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
There we go.
Yes, now here's a few questions he's asked. Okay, what was Dan's inspiration? Who was his favorite magician? And what did he think of Harry Houdini? And does he know the secret code or word that Harry Houdini and his wife had made together when Harry passed away?
Yeah. The code. Yeah, I know the code, but I won't say it, which I could be lying, I guess, at this point. How do you know? It's like,
true.
It's like when you're a kid and they're like, Yeah, whatever. Do you know what this word means? Yeah, what does it mean? Well, I'm not saying because maybe you don't know what it means. No, I know what it means. Why don't you say it? No, I asked you first. It's going to turn into that. But yeah, no, I know the code. And then as far as inspiration, the inspiration was a lot of different things. It wasn't,
It was Copperfield is what you mentioned first. It
was Copperfield. He's the guy that got me started. He's the guy that got me started. But there was also, he also continues to be an inspiration. I mean, the show he's doing now in Vegas is amazing. Nobody can touch the guy. Nobody's ever been able to come close to what he's doing. But as far as other guys, there are lots of other really skilled, very talented magicians that wouldn't even be considered maybe a performer that would fit the genre and style that I do, but I still studied them and appreciated their work. There's a guy, he passed away, unfortunately, just recently. His name was Tom Mullica, and he was really great. And there's an old guy from Chicago named Jay Marshall, another guy from Chicago named Don Allen. Those guys were really great magicians and just, great performers and, just natural, just cool guys. That you'd sit and it's like you'd want to sit and have a beer with them or something and let them do magic, So those are some other guys, and then other inspirations like Disney, anything Disney. I'm a Disney fiend, so anything like that still, and even just movies like I said, like Universal Studios Monsters or just anything Halloween, just that whole thing, that make believe, that feeling of make believe and dress up, and
because that's when he died, right? He died on Halloween.
Yeah, Houdini did die on Halloween. Yeah. Yep. So, hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, now here is another question. This is Lucy Ludlow. How many magicians have passed away in the last 120 years? I'm assuming since Houdini started, and then there's one more after that. If you could...
how many? I'm pretty sure it was all of them.
All have passed away from then. Yes, no, I agree. I'm talking about. I think Lucy's talking about people who died practicing magic. For instance.
Practicing. Oh man, there's too many. I mean, there's some really unfortunate stuff that goes on. Unfortunately, the sad thing with magic is that you get guys who just they might read something in a book and they don't fully understand maybe mathematics or physics or whatever, and they try something and then it screws up. One really sad example, there was a guy, I forget his name right now, but he decided he wanted to do the buried alive bit, right? So he goes to his local whatever, and he's on the news. He's going to do this great buried alive escape, and he's going to have a plexiglass coffin so you can see, everything. And they throw dirt on it, and I want to say, if I remember correctly, they even did wet concrete.
Yes.
And the weight crushed the plexi because I think he built the coffin in his garage or something.
I remember seeing a video where he's being
it's
buried,
hard to watch.
All of a sudden, you just see the cement or wet sand, because it had been raining, right? All of a sudden, it just boom sinks, and it's shattered. I mean, I just couldn't imagine being suffocated to death by dirt. I mean, that's just it's very, very sad.
Yeah,
what about
stuff like that?
The drowning deaths?
Oh yeah, tons of drowning deaths, tons of you'd be surprised, how stupid, I don't want to say stupid because obviously they passed away, but just, not thinking it's that easy and not understanding. Like I said, how you gotta get professionals involved. You can't be a jack of all trades. You just can't. And you gotta get the right people. Guys who have done the upside down straitjacket escape, and they buy the wrong kind of rope, or they buy cotton rope instead of this kind of rope, so it burns too fast, and they've fallen and been paralyzed. They broke their neck and died. Just. Too many to necessarily name, but I mean, so many really sad stories, really.
Well, I think you answered Lucy's question. Okay, this is from Bill in Cleveland, and I got one for you. Okay.
Okay.
You talked about the birds being in your act as part of the team. I'm curious, how long does it take you to train them for your act?
Yeah, that's a tough question because, I mean, they're live animals, right? So, like, I can only try so hard doing so much for so long until it could become pointless because, you know, they're wild animals, and doves are not necessarily the smartest creatures, you know, out there. So that being said, usually it takes, on average, before they're really comfortable, I mean, we're talking daily, every other day, a good few months, maybe 6 months, 7 months, even 8 months, you know, and that's every day, just working with them, because they work best off of repetition, and yeah.
Okay, here's what I got to ask you. You are 29, which is fairly young to have reached the status you have, which is amazing. So where do you see yourself in, say, 10, 20, even 30 years? And what is your ultimate goal? Do you want a Vegas, a mainstream strip show, or do you want to continue to tour the world, or do like David Blaine does, pops up here and there and does a special? I remember my favorite trick. It wasn't that hard, but it was just a misdirection when he took President George Bush's watch off his hand. I thought that was brilliant. But so what do you want to do? I know you're living the life.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, it's really great, and I'm super, I've been booked and blessed, like the saying goes, but I want to keep touring. I really like touring. I like seeing even the smallest little podunk cities. They're towns. It wouldn't even be cities, I like going around and eating local food, that, you run into these places that, we're the jalapeno ice cream capital of the county or whatever, or something like that. And what is that? That's what you guys are known for? I'm going to try that. Sure. Stuff like that, or like the folklore of, maybe this town's Chupacabra, or maybe this town is where you can look at the fingernail that, fell out of John Wilkes Booth's toe or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's always, everybody's got something. And so I love that kind of stuff. And also just being able to, just be on the road. And cause I also get too stir crazy if I'm in one place for too long. And so I prefer to tour and stay on the road. So I think I'm going to do that for as long as I can, but I mean, like I might have alluded to a little bit earlier, I've already done, more than I thought I'd ever be able to,
yes,
or that I'd ever end up doing. So I'm not saying like I'm over it, but I'm just gonna keep riding it and see where I go next. I'm gonna keep my options open and cast my net out there and see what I bring back,
Now, unless this is too many to list, maybe you just go by continents. What countries have you performed in outside the U.S. and Germany, which we already talked about that?
Right.
And which ones were your favorite as far as, like you said, the culture, locale, foods, the people?
Yeah. It's I like the Czech Republic.
Nice.
I've been there.
Nice.
I like Prague. I like their history, with the alchemists, and it's just the architecture there. I love Prague. I loved Edinburgh when I was there. And I even like, it sounds silly, but you'd be surprised. I like Canada. I've toured through there twice, and there was the town right across the river from Detroit, was it Westminster? I forget. It's slipping my mind. But that's I'd only been to that town once for like a one-nighter, and it was really great. I thought it was really pretty. But otherwise, I mean, Melbourne, Australia. I really like Melbourne.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I have family in Sydney. I've never actually visited Australia, but that is on my list to go in the next couple of years. So hopefully you'll be performing there. Okay, just again, a couple more. Now, what is your background? Is it half American Indian?
No, I don't have any American Indian in me that I know of. I mean, my mom studied American Indian and was she American Indian culture and lore and stuff.
That's
and
what
we
it
had,
was. Yes.
Yeah. We used to have tons of like sand paintings and all sorts of really amazing artifacts and artwork. All originals too, because she would work on the reservations that we had in Minnesota, and so she'd always be bringing home these things that they would give her, these gifts of stuff, really cool, dream catchers or baskets that they had woven and, beaded and really, really amazing, art and just anything like that. I remember she had a peace pipe, and I remember looking at it thinking, cowboys and Indians, hey, whatever. But, now that I'm older, I can respect it. That was such a cool thing. And she had this one dress, I remember, that was made, and it was called a jingle dress, and they used it in their dances and stuff. And it was really cool. It was all this, twisted metal that would ring and jingle and make noise. It was really cool.
Nice. Now, okay. Let's see what else we got to get down here. Okay, have you incorporated any of this lore or history that your mother studied into any of your acts, or has it influenced you in any way?
A little bit. If anything, it's sort of influenced. I've recently, in the past few years, started trying to incorporate more lore and sort of ancient, what would you call it? Folklore or urban legend, for lack of a better term, type things into certain specific bits in the show that I feel it would be, appropriate, because it also, I want these things to be relatable, and that's what inspires me too, is, how could I, take these, stories or urban legends or ancient sort of, folklore things and apply them, to a magic presentation, performance, but and have it influence it, not necessarily saying I'm going to recreate what you had heard, or maybe if you haven't heard, here's the story of this, that, or the other, but kind of use it as a basis of inspiration. Yeah.
Yes, gotcha. Okay, I guess this is the final thing I got to ask you. Then, like I said, please hang by. Now,
sure.
If you have one final message for all the listeners, here in the U.S. and, of course, internationally, like where Johnny is and where a lot of these questions have come from, and people that are probably listening but didn't reach out to us tonight, like our famous Peter from Cambodia, who's always Facebook writing questions. Maybe he did tonight, but we just didn't get to him. I do have to apologize to everybody whose calls I've been declining. We just have been tight on time, and I wanted to get as much of Mr. Sperry's info out there. So, Dan, the man, before I ask you to give a final message to everybody, first plug in your info.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody, I guess, wants to see what I'm up to, just dansperry.com is the website, but Twitter, Instagram, that's just Dan Sperry, and then the Facebook is facebook.com Dan Sperry official. Got to drop that official at the end of it because there's a couple others that, people just make fake ones or they, make unauthorized fan versions, and I don't even know what they're putting up there. Who knows? But yeah, you can find out more about what I'm doing, what I'm up to on there. Where I'll be touring to, or what I'm working on. I try and always release a fresh video online on Facebook every Wednesday. So I'm as soon as we're done here, I'm gonna have to finish editing the most recent one that I put together. I try to, when I'm out on these tours, especially, I like to try and just bring a camera. Sometimes it's just my cell phone, even around,
Yes.
and just sort of, give do a little presentation of something, based off of what city I'm in, or something like that. Try and draw inspiration, kind of like I was saying just a moment ago. Just try and, draw inspiration from those sorts of situations, to create something fun to let the viewers get to experience sort of, through the screen.
Now, what message would you like to give everybody out there? Aspiring magicians, people who just like watching magic, fans, people who are not so big fans, which I don't understand how they could not be, but nonetheless, what would your message to the world be?
Well, I don't know. That's a deep question, but I mean, whether it's magic, I guess, really, whether it's magic or whatever, like Jack, the character Jack says in Fight Club, on a long enough timeline, the survival rate of everything drops to 0. So life's too short, really, to not go for whatever you want to go for. For me, it was magic. So if there's other people that are into magic, go for it to whatever capacity you want to, or if you want to be a painter or a singer, or whatever. Everybody's got their thing, and man, I mean, like, I just started this, this last tour. Like I was saying, I just got back from tour last night. Just flew back last night, and that started in September. And for me,
really,
it went by
September to
eight
May.
Months. Yeah, I've been on the road for 8 months, and of that time, I think accumulatively, there was maybe 6 or 7 weeks off in those 8 months. There was a couple weeks here, a week there, a couple weeks there. Otherwise, we're on the road, and that went by so fast. That was like almost 9 months ago, and that makes me go like, wow, that's what now that I've been touring much more heavily now the past few years, instead of just sitting down like I was saying in a Vegas show, or when I had my off-Broadway show in Manhattan, I was just doing it in the same venue every night. I lived above it, and I had my days to myself. I could work on other things. When the time goes by that fast, you feel productive, but yet unproductive at the same time, because you're so limited because you're on the road. It limits you. But it's still great to get out and
tour the world,
on stage and perform. Yeah, just perform every night, man. It's there's nothing else like it. But so that being said, I mean, like, I was from Minnesota. Next town over had the biggest ball of twine. So that's where I'm from, and I'm doing all right, but I've learned, I guess, you can't have anything handed to you. You gotta work hard, and I mean, I sound like an old geezer probably, but that's what I learned. That's what was instilled. That's the work ethic that was instilled in me by my grandparents and even my parents, to that degree. So, but that doesn't, it's still, that's just it, without sounding cliche and wankery. I mean, nothing is impossible, really. I mean, I never thought, like I was saying, I never thought I'd be doing this. I thought I'd be doing kid shows the rest of my life, which I'd be fine with too. If I would have never gone anywhere but just stayed doing kid shows in Chicago, I would have been probably, just fine having that as my level of success degree.
But nonetheless,
because I'm still getting to perform.
Yes.
I'm still getting to perform and chase my dream and do what I love to do, and so that's what anybody should really be doing.
Exactly. That's the keys to success. If you have something you love and it ends up paying you, no matter how little or how much, then you're happy. Because if you're working but it doesn't feel like work to you, like you said, this last 9 months, almost 9 months, went by so quickly, but at the same time it didn't feel like that for you, then clearly you were enjoying yourself. And so I got to hand it to you, my friend. You are truly, enjoying life. And if I want to give a message to everybody out there, remember what Dan's been doing. He found a hobby. The hobby turned to something professional, and he's doing what he loves. And that is the only way you could succeed in life. You have to find what you love and continue doing it. Dan, it has been an honor. I just want to give some shout outs, of course. I want to give a shout out to Angel Espino at PSN Radio Network, where this will be rebroadcast. So everybody, if you missed this or got on here late, make sure you check that out. Of course, we also want to thank JC, who is in London, England, near Johnny Webb. And, of course, thanks to Johnny for setting that up. He is the owner and operator of Deep Program Radio Network. So I want to thank him for bringing us even more listeners. And, of course, Ira Robinson and Michael Vara from Late Night in the Midlands for also carrying our show, where this show will again be repeated with all the terrestrial stations. So again, folks, if you caught on late, you have plenty of chances to hear this again and again and again. And remember, this will go onto YouTube. Now, remember, the name of the show is Dr. J Radio Live. That is the same name of every social media account, including our YouTube channel, DRJ Radio Live. Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Facebook, Google+, Pinterest, Slack, things I don't even know. Even a Gmail, our domain.com, drjradiolive.com. It's all there. And to keep up with upcoming guests, all you have to do is check out the website or just follow us. You'll always see things tweeted or shown through Instagram. So with that being said, let me just give you some heads up of what you guys are going to expect for the rest of the week. Tomorrow, we have Stan the Man, that's how I like to call him, Mr. Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist and the godfather of ufology. And he's got so much more to talk. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to him about nuclear physics. It's the first time we're really going to get into that. And then on Thursday is a double show. We have Eric Von Däniken. That's right, the legendary Eric Von Däniken coming back for his 7th appearance along with Dee Wallace. Now, unfortunately, those you guys cannot ask questions. The reason being is because Eric lives in Switzerland and he is in his 80s, I had to pre-record him, so I'm just giving you that heads up right now. But again, you'll also be able to catch it on all those networks and YouTube, of course. And then next week, don't forget, we have Eric O'Neill. If you've seen the movie Breach, that is the guy that Ryan Felipe's character was based on. He took down Robert Hansen, the guy who was literally, according to the United States statistics, was the worst traitor ever. He was selling secrets to the Soviets for 25 years and is now serving time, life without parole, LWOP, as we call it in law terms, in Colorado in Supermax. Graham Hancock will be joining us as well. Best-selling author, talks a lot about, our ancient history and, of course, things like Göbekli Tepe and the anomalies there. So he's basically proving that Sumeria was not our first true civilized area of this world. There were actually things built prior to that. And more than that, don't forget, I do want to tell you that Michael Dukakis is coming on to make his official endorsement. Now, we all know he's a Democrat. He ran for president and lost to George Herbert Walker Bush in 1988. 8, which means there's only 2 Democratic candidates left. And you've already heard the official endorsement from Senator Mike Gravel, who said not only does he endorse Bernie Sanders, but he is actually predicting that he will win. Now, it's a long shot, but the polls recently show that he is riding up there. So, again, check all that out. There's just so much more to say that we are out of time. David Hatcher Childress, another one who is called the real Indiana Jones. Again, all you have to do is go to drjradiolive.com. Oh, another one, Michael Francesi. You've heard 2 members of the Gambino crime family. Sammy the Bull Gravano's daughter, Karen Gravano. Why not Sammy the Bull? Because the poor guy is still sitting in prison until June 2017. And the former Gambino enforcer, John A. Leet, whose best man at his wedding was the one and only John Gotti Sr. And speaking of the Gottis, John Gotti Jr. will also be joining us soon. So again, all you have to do is follow the website. You know how to get a hold of us. Again, I want to thank my entire team. There's a lot of people who work behind the scenes to get this happening. And, of course, my co-host, Johnny Webb, who is up late, 5 a.m., literally GMT, London time. And we have more work to do after this, so we will continue to do so. So with that being said, this is Dr. J of Dr. J Radio Live, and we are signing off.